Okay, let's dive into one of the most famous scenes in all of literature, the graveyard scene from Hamlet. This is where things get really interesting because it's a moment where dark comedy just smashes right into profound philosophy. And it forces Hamlet, and really us too, to confront the ultimate physical reality of death. Now, before we even step into that graveyard, you gotta remember that Hamlet's mind has been haunted by the idea of death since the very beginning of the play. He's always treated it like a philosophical puzzle. A sleep, an undiscovered country, anything but what it actually is. So, in this explainer, we're going to walk through the scene just as it unfolds. We'll start with these surprisingly dark jokes from the Gravediggers, then move to Hamlet thinking about anonymous skulls, and see how it all narrows down to this deeply personal and frankly chaotic confrontation with mortality.
Right. So for 4 whole acts, death has been a ghost, a question, a threat. But it's never been physical. This scene, right here, is where that abstract idea becomes a tangible, unavoidable reality in the form of dirt and bone.
You see, this religious tension is really the engine of the whole play. His father's ghost says he's in purgatory. That's a Catholic concept. And he's amending revenge. But Hamlet's living in Protestant Denmark, where his faith says vengeance is for God and God alone. This is what paralyzes him. So how on earth does Shakespeare get us ready for such a deep dive into mortality? Well, he starts with a couple of comedians trading jokes while they're literally digging a grave. It's an absolutely brilliant move. The scene kicks off with 2 gravediggers, or clowns as they're called in the script, and they're debating a super serious theological and legal question. Did Ophelia commit suicide, and if she did, does she even deserve a proper Christian burial? This witty back and forth is just packed with meaning. Their argument is a direct parody of a real English court case. And the clown's use of se offendendo is this hilarious misuse of the actual legal term for suicide. But underneath all the jokes, they hit on a crucial truth. Ophelia is only getting this burial because of her high social status. So this isn't just comic relief, not at all. The clown's cynical, down-to-earth perspective completely undermines the fancy airs of the royal court. They know that in the end, everyone, rich or poor, ends up in a hole in the ground. Their jokes set the stage perfectly for what's about to happen. Now, as Hamlet and Horatio show up, the focus shifts from the clown's wordplay to their very real bones they're digging up. And this is where Hamlet starts to see death not just as an event, but as the final equalizing state for every single kind of person. The first skull the gravedigger tosses up catches Hamlet's eye, and right away he imagines this cunning politician. Someone who's spent his entire life trying to outwit everybody, maybe even God himself. And what's the result? His skull is now getting casually knocked around by a shovel. All his brilliant schemes couldn't outsmart death. The next skull sends his mind in a different direction. Now he's picturing a lawyer. A guy who is defined by all these complex legal arguments, all that cleverness, all those little details, his quiddities and quillets, they're just gone. All his expertise can't stop a dirty shovel from knocking him about the sconce. And this is it. This is Hamlet's big realization. Here in the graveyard, all social distinctions are totally erased. The low-status peasant gravedigger is now physically right on top of the remains of the high-status courtier. For the first time, they're on equal footing. Death is the great leveler. But up to this point, all of this has been an intellectual exercise for Hamlet. He's been observing, thinking, speculating. But now, the scene funnels everything down from a general philosophy to a single, terrifying, and deeply personal point of focus. See, so far, Hamlet's been pretty detached, almost academic about all this. But what happens when a skull has a name? The gravedigger is about to hand him one that he recognizes. And that changes everything. He holds the skull, and bam! Suddenly death isn't a concept anymore. It's the physical ruin of a specific person he knew, someone he loved. You can just feel the shift in his voice, from philosophical musing to genuine personal shock. And this isn't just some random acquaintance. Yorick was the court jester, a man whose entire life was about life, laughter, and joy. For Hamlet, this skull is a direct link to his own childhood, to a time before his father was murdered and his mother remarried, a time of happiness that has now literally decayed in his hands. This is a perfect example of the classic idea of memento mori. Yorick's skull is the ultimate reminder.
It forces Hamlet to confront not just the death of other people, but the stark, unavoidable fact that he himself will die. He sees his own future in that eyeless grin.
And just as Hamlet seems to reach this profound philosophical acceptance of death's finality, the whole scene just explodes. The quiet contemplation is shattered by the arrival of raw, messy, immediate grief.
A funeral procession arrives, and Hamlet, who's now totally tuned into the customs of death, immediately sees that the ceremony is incomplete. These maimed rites confirm exactly what the clowns were debating at the start. The person being buried is suspected of suicide. Of course, he has no idea yet that it's Ophelia.
The priest himself confirms it. Because her death was doubtful, she's denied the full ceremony. She's only allowed to be buried in the churchyard because of a great command, basically an order from the king, but there will be no requiem mass sung for her soul, which is a clear sign of the church's judgment.
And then he sees Laertes, Ophelia's brother, literally leap into her grave, just overcome with this very loud, very public sorrow. At that moment, all of Hamlet's quiet, intellectual understanding of death just evaporates. He confronts Laertes, jumping into the grave himself, and he challenges the very nature of his grief. It proves that philosophy is no shield against the raw pain of losing someone you love. So in the end, this incredible scene isn't just about the fact that everyone dies. It's about how confronting the physical, messy reality of death forces us to question everything about life, our ambitions, our social status, our grief, and what truly matters before we too become just a skull in the earth.